Every musician has a story, but every now and then, you meet someone whose story has been written alongside some of the biggest names in music. My guest today is Travis Woods, a gifted musician whose talent has taken him from local stages to unforgettable moments with artists like Vince Gill, Chris Stapleton, Brad Paisley, and Keith Urban. We'll talk about the music, the memories, the friendships, and the lessons learned along the way. So settle in, because I think you're going to enjoy this conversation with a man who truly knows what it's like to live the music. My conversation with Travis Woods starts right now.
You know, some conversations are about music, and some are about the stories that make the music come alive. Today's guest has spent years around legendary artists, unforgettable performances, and moments that most of us only dream about. Along the way, he's collected stories that are funny, inspiring, and deeply rooted in the country music history. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with a man who has seen it from all the unique perspectives. I'm Mike Stone, and this is Music, Stories, and Conversations, and we're going to be talking with Travis Woods. Travis, welcome to the Mike Stone Show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Really excited.
Well, Travis is a good friend of mine. We go pretty far back, he and his family, and what a great musical family. Raised up right here in North Louisiana, a little bitty community of Ansley. Am I right, Travis?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ansley, and I think you went to the high school there, Quitman High.
Yes, sir. Went to Quitman and then attended Louisiana Tech.
Well, why don't we just start around there with Ansley and Quitman, and first made you pick up a guitar and decide that music was going to be part of your life?
Well, Mom and them bought me a guitar early. I was about 10 years old, and I started playing. And Joe Woods would come to town every now and then, and he'd pass through and show me a few things. And my brother Marty went off to the Navy, and every time he'd come back, he'd show me 2 or 3 more chords. And I guess my first time to play, my first stage was at the Ansley Union Church. I was 13 years old, and I played. The preacher had me come up there, and I did the old rugged cross.
At 13 years old, you and your family are very musical. And as you said, you had an uncle named Joe Woods. Joe's very much known around these parts. He just a great guy, and he started a little show here called the Wildwood Express. We'll get into some of that, Travis, but first we're going to talk mostly about you. And after you graduated high school, I guess you came to Louisiana Tech. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Came to Louisiana Tech, and the Lawson Company in Ruston had that syndicated program. If you were in the city limits of Ruston and you had cable vision, then you could get their TV shows. And we had a television show called Dance Time that went from 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 5 o'clock. But that was right there while I was going to Tech, and a bunch of the guys in the band were still in the high school. So they'd get out of school every day and come to the studio, and we would record Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then we could sit at home on Friday and watch a rerun of ourselves on TV on Dance Time.
Americana Studios, located right here in Ruston, Louisiana, and owned by the Lawsons, Phil and his brother Steve and their dad. And, I never realized there was a TV show produced there. I never knew that, Travis.
It was, man. I'm telling you, we were so green. All we knew how to do was play music. And they would say, stand over there and play. And every now and then we'd get too loud. And boy, they'd go to grabbing their headphones and throwing them down on the floor. And I knew I had done messed up.
Well, you had your band. Did y'all play at other venues and things around during that time?
We did. We played birthday parties. We played dances. We played the illustrious skating rink out on the north side of town.
Man, that's big time, Travis, big time. Well, did you have a name for your band?
Yes. That band was called the Faded Image.
Oh, that's a great name, Faded Image. Yeah.
Faded Image, yes, sir. And then it went on to grow into Hickory, and we changed the name to Hickory later on.
Right. Now, I suppose you met your wife, Lois. Did you meet her? Where did you meet Lois?
Well, there was a friend of mine that I knew, and she had a friend they were dating, and they both said, "I got somebody I want you to meet." Well, I was playing with a club band in Monroe. We was playing a Dynasty Lounge and different places like that. And one Sunday afternoon, Lois worked at the movie theater. And one Sunday afternoon, I got all gussied up, went to the music theater, knocked on the door, and she came and opened the door. And I said, "Hey, my name's Travis. We were supposed to meet a long time ago, but they never did set it up." So that's how I met her. Just walked up and introduced her.
Right. Now, your bands, you said you played a lot in Monroe. There's another band in Ruston area called the Spectres. We've done a lot of stories on the Spectres. Do you remember the Spectres at any time you were playing around some of those bands or venues in Monroe, Travis?
I remember crossing paths with them. We had some battle of the bands from time to time, and or we'd do a festival or two. And I remember seeing them. I didn't really know the guys, but I remember seeing their band. Sure do.
So let's take you on a little bit further. Now you graduated university. What was your next move?
I was working my way through college being an electrical helper. And when I got out of college, my cousin owned the electrical shop. He had bought out Mallory Electric, used to be a Mallory Electric in Ruston. And he offered me a chance to come on with him. So I did. I just stayed on with him, became a journeyman electrician. And eventually that's what brought us to Texas as a master electrician. Corporate America moved us down here about 32 years ago.
So you and Lois were married in 1977. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct. 49 years ago.
Oh, my. About to have the big 5-0 there, Travis.
That's right. Yes, sir. Next year.
So I know she was a big part of your whole musical career, and that's been a great thing for you to have her as a supporter all throughout your regular job and your music career as well.
Yes, sir. That's correct. Whenever I worked for corporate America, I always required Lois to be my secretary because I knew when I called in, if I was in Georgia or Alabama or somewhere and I called in and needed something, I knew she would take care of it. And then Lois sang with the Hickory Band in Ruston. She always had a good voice, sang on the Wildwood 2 or 3 times. And Lois has become a real accomplished songwriter. That's where all the songs came from on our new album.
Well, I did not know that little bit there, so we're going to have to give Lois her due on the whole thing here about your musical career. Then, so in 1979, Travis, I believe y'all decided to pack up and move to Branson, Missouri. Of course, the place there with all the great theaters and everything else that they had, especially back in that time, Travis, in 1979.
That's right. There was only 13 shows in town. We had we played the Starlight Theater. Across the road, Hee Haw Theater built theirs. We got to Lulu Raman and the Hager twins. The lady that owned the show where we played, they moved it out of Grapevine Opry. So it was Starlight Theater presents the Grapevine Opry. And that gal dated one of the Hager twins, Jim Hager. So we were kind of up close and personal with the Hager twins and Lulu Raman and Gordy Tapp, Misty Rowe. One of them was at our theater every week, just kind of hanging out, watching what was going on. And we were one of the first theaters in the area to wear tuxedos and tennis shoes and still have a little slapstick comedy in the program.
Hey, if anybody has ever watched the Hee Haw, they know who you're talking about with Lulu Raman and the Hager twins, but they were all right across from you all from the Starlight Theater, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
So you stepped in there in 1979, as you said there, it was sort of just about to get hot there. Landed a steel guitar position with the famous Soji Tabachi. Am I saying that right?
Tabucci. Yes, Tabucci. Yes, sir. What it was, Lois and I had gone up there on vacation, pulled in a gas station about midnight, filling up Seaside Childs that owned the Grapevine Opry out of Grapevine, Texas. She walked in the gas station, and I said, "Hey, how would somebody go about getting a playing job up here?" She said, "Well, we open in 2 weeks. What can you do?" I said, "I can play pretty much anything on stage, guitar, bass, steel." She said, "I need a steel man. Can you open in 2 weeks?" I said, "Yeah." we literally went home, and some friends of ours from out in Simsboro helped us move in 2 weeks, put everything in a storage building, and we moved up there and rented a place on the lake. And on Sunday afternoon, we moved in there with a band. I mean, it went from there. Sure did.
My goodness. Now, everybody who is familiar with Branson, he had one of the most familiar shows around, Soji I'm talking about. And so you stayed with him for maybe 4 years. And so what was Soji like, when the curtain went up? We know he was a great entertainer compared to backstage. I think you traveled around with Soji quite a bit, and you probably learned a lot about the man and a lot about who he was.
Yeah, Shoji was a great guy. Lois kept books for Shoji. Okay, in other words, you had a bookkeeper for the theater, then you had a bookkeeper for Shoji, then you had a bookkeeper for the Masters for Quartet. And the Masters Four traveled in their bus. We traveled in our bus with Shoji. And he was an all-around great guy, and just do anything for you, and just so appreciative. I mean, everything was thank you very much, with Shoji.
And the Masters 4 Quartet, you mentioned them. They were also part of the show. And I guess he had special entertainers come on the show. And so, man, that was, you was learning some chops, or you already knew a lot of chops, but you were learning quite a bit there in Branson and playing for him. And I guess going to other shows and just having maybe the time of y'all's life, maybe, I hope.
We really were, because we didn't have any kids, and it was just Lois and I. She was the only wife that got to travel with the show. And I mean, we would, in October, we'd close the show down, get on the bus, and travel all winter. Yeah, I mean, you may be home for 2 or 3 weeks and then go out again for a week. But we would travel doing shows. And I'll never forget, we opened for Don Williams in Norman, Oklahoma, south of Oklahoma City, downtown. They had a theater, kind of like the Dixie in Ruston. And we opened for Don Williams. 2 o'clock in the morning, we pulled out of Norman, Oklahoma from Denny's, driving across the state of Arkansas to the Forum in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And I was one of the guys that could drive. There wasn't 2 of us had commercial license. So I was backing up to the building, and Lois said, "Who are we opening for?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't have a clue." She looked up on the big sign. It said, "Welcome, Barbara Mandrell." So that was a pretty good show.
Oh, my. So if anybody thinks the music life is just an easy deal and everybody's just all great, they're traveling around and all the things, trying to get all the equipment in, but opening for Barbara Mandrell, boy, she was about as hot as a firecracker during that time.
She was. She had her own TV show, and people said, "Oh, did you get to meet her?" I said, "No, I would have done better having a seat on the front row. I could have got closer to her. She had so dang many cops around her, guarding her. You couldn't even get a wave out of her,
A lot of security, even back then at that time. Get back to Branson when you had a show just about, or 2 shows maybe a day. I'm not quite sure. But you was part of the stage band. Tell us what a typical day was like, during your Branson season when you were there.
Yes, sir. A typical day, Lois and I would get to work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We had band practice. Lois would open the ticket office, start selling tickets. I'd go up on stage, and the band would practice from 4 to 6. Then we'd start getting dressed, and we had a show from 7 to 9. Okay. And the show was over at 9 o'clock. We'd put our instruments away, talk about tomorrow night's show, because we ran shows 7 nights a week and 2 shows on Sunday. We had a 2 o'clock matinee on Sunday. So we'd leave there at 10 o'clock, and the Greenbrier Hotel was right down the road from where our theater was, and the Greenbrier would let all of us come down and swim in the pool, because they closed the pool at 10 o'clock for their guests, but they let us come down. So, I mean, Lulu Ramen and the Hager twins and all them would come down. We'd all jump in the pool and cool off for an hour or 2. And then some of the guys and gals would go down on the on Tennecomo Lake, and they go fishing for trout at night. I mean, we did it a few times. It was pretty cool. Wasn't nothing like bass fishing, though,
Well, sound like maybe you had a little time, but after a show, I mean, it takes a while to wind down, and then you got to get back up and do it the next day, and then 2 shows on Sunday. They worked you pretty hard, and people think, again, how easy that life is, but it is difficult, and people who really know how that is, it takes a lot of toll on your whole body there, try to get up and get ready for the next day. Is there any one
That's right.
Branson memory that maybe sticks out and makes you smile even today?
The Presleys and the Ball Knobbers, love them guys. I mean, we knew them from way back, and Mike Ito played fiddle for the Ball Knobbers, and I saw his name in lights the other day, so I pretty much know he's still with the Ball Knobbers. But the Presleys, they've been there, they've been the Ball Knobbers longer than anyone. It was neat because, see, if you lived in town and you were a musician, because we worked out of the Kansas City local. So we had a union card. And if you had a union card, a lot of times we'd run 6 nights a week instead of 7. So that one night off, we'd go to another show. And you walk in and you flash that card and you got in free. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. You had 4 years there in Branson Hall with
Yeah.
the
Yes, sir.
Starlight Theater. So,
Yes, sir.
and in the winter months, during those times, you were traveling all over the place, as you said, and going from here to here, from town to town, trying to make it to the next show.
That's right. And I'm going to tell you, we were some of the first people to play football arenas. We went all the way to St. Petersburg, Florida, and played in a big outdoor arena. There was 2 or 3 other bands, and we did 7 shows with Dave and Sugar and Tony Orlando and Dawn. That was in Florida. Started St. Petersburg and kind of worked our way up into Georgia. Sure did.
Amazing career. I mean, unbelievable. Open for all these people. You opened for Don Williams, I think, one time. Did you get a chance to talk with him at all?
Oh, we did. We had done, besides opening for him one time, we had gone and seen him 4 different times and got to go backstage and meet and greet, all that kind of stuff, because I knew the booking agents that were booking him, and he was Lois's favorite. So, man, we got books of pictures of us and Don Williams. Sure did.
Well, let's move on again, and let's fast forward you. I know you had a big job there in Texas, and you started a band called the Classics Recovered Band. How did
Yes, sir.
that group come together, Travis?
A friend of mine called and said, "Hey, there's a couple of us going to get together and play. Bring a guitar, and I want you to play with us." And I said, "Okay, I will." So I went. We were playing, and Tracy Bird's manager, Joe, I forgot his last name, Joe was there, and we were playing and clapping and having a good time. But 2 of the guys in the band worked for Motiva Refinery, largest refinery in the Northern Hemisphere. And Joe came up and said, "Hey, you playing music with them guys?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Look, we booked Charlie Daniels coming to town." This was 2009. "We booked Charlie Daniels coming to town. Y'all want to open for him?" I said, "Yeah." We didn't even have a drummer. We had a bass player and a mandolin player and a couple of guitars. And I said, "Yeah, we got this." And then when the guys looked at me, they said, "And how are we going to do this?" I said, "Well, just hide and watch." So I called a friend of mine who came and played drums. We had a bass player that was out of Kansas City. He was local working on a project. And I put all them boys together, and we played in front of 3,500 people in 2009, open for Charlie Daniels. And that's how the Classics Recovered band got started.
I know you and our good friend Buddy Terzier from right here in Ruston. Buddy had a great friendship with Charlie Daniels as well. So I know you and him have talked about your relationship and his relationship with Charlie Daniels. Buddy Terzier has played with him many times, and I know you and
That's
Buddy
right.
have talked about that quite a bit.
Sure have. And see, when I booked that show, I called Buddy. I said, "Buddy, you've done some stuff with Charlie?" "Yeah." And I said, "We're going to open for him Saturday night." He said, "Well, it's Charlie's birthday." So I went and had a plaque made to one real American, your friends in Southeast Texas, the Classics Recovered Band. And that plaque is hanging in Charlie's Museum in Hendersonville, Tennessee right now.
Oh, my goodness. And I didn't know he had a museum, but he has one in Hendersonville, Tennessee.
That's right. That's correct.
Okay. Well, people need to go there and take a look at that plaque that you made for him. That would be pretty neat. So, Travis, what do you think makes country music and the classic rock that you played with the Classics Recovered Band? How's that a perfect fit for the combination for your audiences, really?
Well, we don't mind playing oldie but goodies. We don't mind playing, we open up with a Creedence Clearwater Revival song, then we go into Merle Haggard, okay? And then we may go into a Moody Blues. So we are a total mix of music. That's why people like us. And you looked at that list I sent to you of all the folks we've opened for. Mickey Gilley and Johnny Lee and Sawyer Brown and Reba McEntire. We opened for Reba. Our fiddle player, backup singer, was my keyboard player's sister. Okay. And we opened for them. Their mom was real bad off with cancer. So the girls took mom to town, bought her a gown, bought her a wig, brought her to the concert. And I hired a photographer. I said, you take pictures of them gals with their mom every time somebody moves. Well, both gals was on stage with me. We opened the show with San Antonio Rose. So see, we had pictures of Reba's backup singer standing beside me and my keyboard fiddle player on the other side. And they did about 10 songs with us. Then they went and spent time with their mom. Their mom had not heard them play together in 20 years. And it worked so good, flawless, took over 300 pictures, and 3 months later, their mom passed away.
Oh, that's a great story. So, Reba is one of the biggest stars ever, but I understand she's just a real down-to-earth and easy to talk with, and you found that to be true.
Yes, sir. She is just as country as they come. I mean, just a great gal. Handed her my cowboy hat. She signed my cowboy hat, and it's hanging on the wall in my little museum down here now.
Oh, my. Well, you said you opened for Mickey Gilley, a Louisiana guy from Faraday, Louisiana, and, of course, all his cousins, and Johnny Lee. Of course, they represent maybe a great era there of country music. You got any favorite members of Mickey Gilley and Johnny Lee?
I really do, because we had never been around them. And, their bus pulled in the Civic Center. Of course, we were there watching the stage being built. We had about 1,000 folks that night, and it was a Cattle Barons Ball. We played the Cattle Barons Ball a dozen times. But anyhow, I walked out and met the bus, and his manager got off the bus and said, hey, can you send somebody to go get some vegetable soup? And I said, yeah, what's the matter? He said, well, Mickey passed out on stage last night in Houston. He was dehydrated. So we need him to eat some soup before he can play tonight. So I sent and got him some soup, got on the bus, gave it to him. But they came backstage. We had a dressing room for them. Mickey came back there and sat. Both of them were riding one of them little scooters, and to get up to the stage. And then they waddled out on stage and sat on a stool. But after the show was over, I mean, these guys did the urban cowboy songs, flawless. And after the show was over, we was all sitting backstage with Mickey and Johnny. And Mickey, somebody said something about Gilley's over in Pasadena. He said, yeah, we had Gilley's going one night, and Mel Tillis showed up. He had played Gilley's, and he got on one of those bucking bulls, and that bull flipped him, and he had them old big bell-bottom breeches on, and he ripped the center all the way out of them breeches, the whole backside. So we took them breeches and threw them up in the rafters of Gilley's, and I guess they burned up when the building burnt down.
Travis, I wonder if Mel Tillis could speak straight after he got through with all that encounter with the bull. He probably started talking even straight. If anybody doesn't know, Mel Tillis, I don't know if he used that. I think he really did have a stutter. Nonetheless, a great songwriter and a great entertainer. Now, this guy here, Travis, one of my favorite. This guy, unbelievable talent, Steve Wariner. Boy, he's a phenomenal guitarist. You get to talk guitars with Steve Wariner.
Let me tell you what. We have got tight with Steve Wariner. I got him on speed dial. He's come to guitar shows and seen us, but we booked Steve Wariner for the Cattle Barons Ball, and my band opened for him. Well, Tracy Byrd was in the audience watching the concert, okay? Well, we were playing right in the middle of it. I looked over on the side on the stairs, and Steve was standing there watching. And I'm thinking, what is this guy watching me for? He's making me nervous, And we finished our gig, and his manager came up there and said, hey, Steve wants to use that amplifier you got. I had a real kind of a mid-'80s Music Man amplifier, one 10-inch speaker, but it really was hot. It was a nice amp. And he said, "Can you leave it there? Steve wants to play it besides his amp." I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." So we went off stage, went backstage, shook his hand, took pictures, because one thing, when I open for somebody, my contract reads 15 minutes backstage, meet and greet and pictures. So we went back there and we visited, and he talked about my amp and stuff. And then we went out and sat down and watched his show. Right in the middle of his show, he called Tracy Byrd up, and they did Working Man Blues together. And Tracy Bird's from Beaumont. I mean, I've known him a long time. And so that was pretty neat. And then the next year, he came to a guitar show, sat down in the booth, looked at some of our guitars, just visited. Then, a few months later, I get a phone call. This is Steve Warner's office. Steve will be in Beaumont, Texas, playing Saturday night. He will have tickets for you backstage if you care to come. I said, "Yeah." So me and Lois went, and we went on the bus with him for about 30 minutes. And he signed autographs, and we took pictures on the bus and all that. And then we went on in and took our seat, and he came in and did the show and called my name from the stage. I mean, stuff that a country boy from Anton, Louisiana, only the good Lord could make that happen.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable, the people you've made contact with, the artists and the entertainers. But Steve Warner, I mean, Chet Atkins has got him on one of the certified guitar pickers. There's only about 4 of them, and Steve Warner is one of those. And I think you met the other one, Tommy Emmanuel. You got up here with Tommy Emmanuel, who has been here a couple of times. He's worldwide, of course, a guy from Australia. But Tommy Emmanuel, what a unbelievable guitar pick. I mean, I don't even know what to call his type of guitar playing. Do you, Travis?
It's classical with a little rock in there, but the guy is so down to earth. He walked in my booth and picked up a guitar, and his bus driver is a friend of mine from Orange, Texas, Scott. And he walked in and grabbed the guitar and strummed one chord. And him and Scott started singing cotton picking old hillbilly song way down yonder in the bayou country, dear old Louisiana. They were clapping their hands and singing a cappella to the top of their lungs. And I said, only in cotton picking Nashville, Tennessee can this happen.
What a story. I tell you, these stories you tell in our audiences, I hope you believe everything, because Travis is telling you all the truth here, folks. And it's really an amazing life. And he doesn't take it for granted at all. I know you cherish every moment you've had with these artists and all the musicians. And I know your passion for music. How about the group Sawyer Brown, which, oh, man, do I love Sawyer Brown. Boy, they bring a lot of energy. I know you opened for them, too, I think.
Yeah, we did. Mark Miller, and I'll have to send you that picture. Mark Miller's a great guy. He's our lead singer. They took 2 4x8 sheets of plexiglass, screwed it down on the stage all the way across the front. Well, we were opening for them. So we was out there hammering, and I turned around. I had cowboy boots on, and my cotton picking foot slipped, and my leg went up and bent, and I was going down, and the photographer took a perfect picture. Boom! People said, "Oh, how did you play with one foot up?" I said, "Well, I did not hit the floor. I caught myself, but I dang sure didn't move around anymore, because when Mark Miller gets up there, he goes shuffling them feet, and he can dance from one side of the stage to the other, but he's dancing on plexiglass. A lot of folks didn't know that."
I didn't. I have seen a YouTube video of him, and he does not stay in one place. He goes from one side to the other on that whole stage. He sort of brings some energy there to that whole thing. Unbelievable, really.
That's right. And one cool thing about that, they came backstage, and we had our dressing room next to theirs, and I always put 3 or 4 guitars back there. Hey, let's work on that harmony before we go out, guys. And we'll grab a couple of guitars. Well, their guitar player walked in. He said, "Whose guitar is that?" And it was one of mine. It looks like a dobro with a metal resonator with a round neck, so you can play it like a regular guitar instead of a slide. He said, "Whose is that?" It was a big old Gretsch. I said, "That's mine." He said, "Can I play it?" He walked over and picked it up. He said, "Wow, I've never had nothing like this." I said, "Well, play it all you want." He said, "Could I play it tonight on 2 songs?" I said, "Yeah, knock yourself out." So he took it out on stage, and I got pictures of him playing my guitar on those two songs, you know?
Oh, my goodness. That great song, This Night Won't Last Forever. I'm sure they played that. You recall what
Yes,
song
sir.
I'm talking about? I don't think that's
Yep.
an original by them, but they had a number one hit with that song, and I remember them playing. Well, they was bringing it. Interesting time with that group of guys, I am sure. And let's call a couple more names here. John Michael Montgomery. Tell us about that guy.
John Michael is such a great guy. When he showed up, these guys got off the bus, and I said, "Is this your band?" He said, "No, it's my hunting buddies. We're leaving here going to Colorado elk hunting." And then another bus pulled up, which was his band. But John Michael, he sat around, and a lot of people said, "Oh, we don't want to hire him because he drinks too much." No, that guy was as down to earth as you want to be. And he came backstage and visited with us, and we talked about some of the songs that he had written. So, where did you find that song and stuff like that? And I'm telling you, that guy put on a great show. And then when the show was over, he and his buddies got on his bus, headed straight to Colorado on a big elk hunt.
Sounds like fun. These guys got to have a release there sometime. They got to do something fun. Oh, Neil McCoy, the guy he has a lot of humor, and I guess he kept everybody laughing backstage, I would imagine.
He is such a great guy, and he autographed. Now, every one of these folks, including Reba, anybody, when we get in front of them, they autograph a guitar from me, an acoustic, and I donate that acoustic to charity. We've given away over 100 acoustics in 10 years, and probably 25 fiddles from Charlie Daniel. And Neil McCoy was no different. He autographed the guitar for me, laughed, cut up. And when he takes the stage, he commands the stage. I mean, he'll walk, he'll point to people, talk to them, put on their ball cap, all that kind of stuff. But Lois told him about a story that he had that song, "Give Me That Wink," W-I-N-K. And Lois said, "I got to tell you about my mom." And he said, "What?" He said, "Mom was listening to your song one time. Mama's favorite part of fried chicken was the wing. And when that song came on and said, 'Give me that wing,' she said, 'Well, I'll tell you one thing, I wouldn't give him my wing.'"
Oh, that is hilarious.
He thought that was the funniest thing.
Well, you opened twice for a guy here swinging, John Anderson.
I'm telling you what, John is such a great guy. His fiddle player lives in Benton, Louisiana, about 15 miles through the woods from where we live. Great guy. We had about 5,000, had an outdoor concert, big stage set up, and John Anderson and Ronnie Millsap was on the same ticket. So we got to go backstage and meet them and shake hands and autographs and stuff. Somebody started talking hunting with John just before he went on stage. And it took 15 minutes. His manager had to go around there and say, "John, your band's warmed up for 15 minutes. You got to get out there." He was talking hunting with somebody, and that was so funny, He is a great cotton picking guy. And my daughter was working for a veterinarian here in town. And our veterinarian folks loved him too. So we got them tickets backstage, and they got to meet him and get autographs and all that good stuff. But we did that one there, about 5,000 people. Then a couple of years later, we opened for him at the Cattle Barons Ball, which was about 1,000 folks. Everybody dressed Western and all that stuff. But John is a great musician, guitar, banjo, all that kind of stuff,
And you said Ronnie Millsap, the great piano player. Of course, he lost his sight very young, maybe even born there. But one of the greatest entertainers maybe in country music history, Ronnie Millsap. And you got a chance to talk with him and admire his work right up close and personal.
That's right. I mean, I walked up behind the stage, walked up beside the drummer, and stood there and watched Ronnie play from the side. And I'm going to tell you, that guy had a set of lungs like a blue tick hound. I mean, he could sing and just as smooth as silk and hammer on that piano. And he was just such a great, great guy. Sure was.
Well, a couple of more guys here, Joe Diffie and Daryl Singletary. If anybody knows country music, boy, they represented what I would say maybe traditional country music. What would you say, Travis?
Well, let me tell you, they are what I call original country. Daryl Singletary, we opened for him, probably had 500 people at that event. and all of our wives came with us. Well, he's a pretty guy, so they all had to have their picture beside. He had a big white bus, and they got their pictures made beside the bus, and we were up there practicing, and we were working on one of the Creedence songs or something, and he walked by in front of the stage and stopped and sang a verse or two with us, just singing top of his lungs. Just the greatest guy in the world, just a all-around good guy. Sure was.
My goodness. And I know these two young men here have a big place in your heart, I'm sure, and you have really taken to them, and they've taken to you. And that would be Ricky Nelson's two, I believe they're twins, Matthew and Gunnar Nelson. Ricky Nelson from the famous Ozzie and Harriet show, and Ricky Nelson from Garden Party. And if people know that tradition and know that, but Matthew and Gunnar Nelson, tell me a little bit about your relationship with those two young guys.
Well, we met them at a guitar show, and they came down the aisle and they looked at guitars, and we took pictures and they autographed and stuff, just about like I do Vince Gill for 15, 16 years in a row. And I said, look, guys, y'all out touring? Yeah, we do Daddy's show. We do a memory show of Ricky Nelson. I said, man, we want to book y'all in Port Arthur. So I came down, talked to the folks that I help them book some stuff, and we booked them in Port Arthur Saturday about 12 o'clock, the day of the concert. We took them out to eat seafood, and we was visiting. They said, did you bring a guitar? I said, yeah, but what do you want me to bring a guitar for? Well, we figured we're going to let you do Garden Party with us because you booked the event. And I said, well, that's good. So we went 2 o'clock. We had a sound check. We went through the song. And luckily, they didn't ask me to sing no words. And on the way back home to get Lois, it was about an hour drive. I listened to Garden Party about 20 times, coming home and going back. And when it came time, their show was almost over. They called me up on stage. I put in my earbuds, walked out there, and told them, how proud I was to be up there with them. And I said, how are we going to do this? They said, Matthew, first verse, you second verse, Gunnar, third verse. And we pulled it off without a hitch. And you can see it on YouTube. And when you're watching that video, you're going to look over there at Gunnar, and when I finally said my last word and backed up from the mic, you saw Gunnar go,
we made it. We made it through.
He did not miss it,
Yeah. Oh, that's...
That was pretty cool. And them guys, I've been to their house, picked up guitars, took them on consignment at the guitar show. These guys are down to earth. I mean, good old boys.
Oh, yes. Well, hey, let's talk a little bit about you and Lois. Y'all been in the guitar collecting business for probably more than 3 decades. How'd that start, Travis?
That started with me and Ricky Nelson and Mitt Scott from Ruston.
Ricky Nelson, not the same one.
That's right, famous, different one.
But a great guy nonetheless, no doubt.
Yes, sir. But we went to a show in Dallas, watched the guitar show. All of us had guitars at home in the closet under the bed. We said, hey, why don't we try this? So we did a show in Houston and sold a bunch of guitars, made a bunch of money. And as time rocked on, Rick had to pull out and Mitt moved to Dallas. And Lois and I just kind of hung on to it. And it's called Wildwood Music of Texas. So we're keeping the dream alive. We've been doing it for 32 years, been a member of the Amigo guitar shows in Texas. We do a rock and roll show May 1st weekend every year. We do Nashville the 3rd weekend of March, and we'll do Mesquite the 3rd week of October. And you talk about, meeting people in Dallas. There'll be rock and rollers. Billy Gibbons will come walking down the aisle. And he walked in, and I got him to autograph a picture and got pictures with him. And, one big thing about the guitar show, I got to tell you, we was in Dallas, probably 5,000 stringed instruments in the World Trade Center. Big deal. I walked off to go get Lois and myself some lunch. When I came back, a guy from across the aisle walked over and said, did Lois get his autograph? I said, well, I don't know. Lois, did you get an autograph? No, from who? He walked over and he said, you didn't get his autograph? She said, who was it? He said, Eric Clapton in a 3-piece suit with a little old A model, one of them little flat hats on, and an open collar. just walking around. And he came in the booth and sat down, played a guitar, got up and walked out. And Lois looked around in the booth, and there was an orange guitar pick with Eric Clapton on it. He left his calling card.
Slow hand himself, right?
That's it.
Eric Clapton. Hey, and you
Yeah.
mentioned Gibbons guy, that's ZZ Top. Yeah, everybody knows the ZZ Top guys with the long beards, and I think one of them has passed. Gibbons.
Yeah, Dusty passed away, yeah.
So the guitar shows in Dallas, Mesquite, Nashville, and maybe Chicago. Which one has been probably the most unforgettable memory there, the guitar show, Travis? I know a lot of them, and don't tell me yet, but because I'm about to tell everybody in the audience who you all become friends with at your guitar shows. I'm about to give those names, but
Nashville, hands down, Nashville, Tennessee.
that's the most memorable, and I'm sure that's where most of the stars. And here's, ladies and gentlemen of the Mike Stone Show, here's the people that Travis has become acquainted with and become good friends with, and he's met them at the guitar shows. That would be Vince Gill, Brad Paisley, Keith Urban, Tommy Emmanuel, and, of course, many, many others. He sent me a picture, ladies and gentlemen, with his wife, with Keith Urban's, then wife, Nicole Kidman, and they were hugging up there, Travis. I mean, they looked like they were best buddies.
I know. She sat down in the booth for an hour while Keith walked around and looked at guitars, and her and Lois just carried on and visited like she was just a good old friend.
Well, tell me, I think we've talked about this, but Vince Gill wanted to get one of your guitars, and he wanted it real bad, but, you had to have it because what you do is sometimes you go and you look at other people, they call you and come and look at their guitars and appraise them, and you take them to the shows trying to make a sale.
Correct.
Vince was there wanting to get one of the guitars, but you had to make a sale at a certain price. But tell us a little bit about that story with Vince.
Vince walked up and he saw that because I had the only 1952 Fender in the house that day. So when he walked in, somebody walked over and pointed him out to us, and he came over there and he called me Tex. He said, "Tex, you got a 52 Blackguard?" I said, "Yeah, right here." So I handed it to him, plugged it in. He sat there and played it. And he stood up and he said, "Okay, what you want?" And I told him, well, he wanted to give me about $5,000 less. I said, No, I can't do that. This is on consignment. I'm doing this for a friend, and I got to have this much, or you just put it down and carry on. Well, I'm leaving tomorrow, going to Ireland. I'm going to be on tour over there. I said, "Yeah, I know, and you got more money than me and Gunk. Come on, dude." And he laughed. But I found that picture last night. I'll send it to you, of me holding the guitar, had my hand going up and down, talking to Vince. He was looking down at me because he's a lot taller than me. But Lois took that picture from the side, so you'll get a kick out of that.
Oh, yeah. Now, one of my favorite, boy, did I love this guy and his band. That'd be Jeff Hanna from the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And I think you had a chance to talk with him. Jeff Hanna, by all accounts, just a swell guy.
He really is. He hangs out with Vince a lot. They come to the show and walk around together. And he and Lois, he came in the booth the very first time, probably 15 years ago. And he walked in and Lois said, she makes brownies and chocolate chip cookies. And she said, "Would you like a brownie?" And he said, "Are they the good brownies?" And Lois said, "Well, yeah, they're the good brownies." "What do you mean they're good?" "I baked these." And Lois took it offensive, and I stopped. I said, wait a minute. And I put my hand on her shoulder. I said, "Dear child, he was raised in California. Sometimes they cook at wacky weed." And boy, her cheeks turned red. She said, "No, I'm not." And she put a lid on that thing and walked off. And he followed her to the other side of the booth. Give her a big old bear hug. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings." And they have bonded ever since.
Good. What a story. Yeah, Jeff Hanna from Long Beach, California. That's where they got together out there. And, yeah, we were able to see them over here in Shreveport at the Strand Theater. Him and his son is playing with them. But, boy, what a great, great entertainer and pretty fantastic musician, Jeff Hanna.
I'm telling you, he really is. And he married Matraca Bird, who has like 30 #1 hits, Reba McEntire and all these different people. So they are a super music family,
No doubt. And now this guy, Rick Vito, I think he took over from Lindsey Buckingham with the famous Fleetwood Mac and he's played with Bob Seger. He's played with everybody, Rick Vito, and you had a chance to pal up with him.
I'm telling you, we've known him for probably 15, 12, 15 years. He is a great guy, wears dark glasses, dresses a little preppy. But, I love to sit down and say, okay, tell me what's the neatest concert you ever did. And now I know right now he'll fly to Hawaii, and Mick Fleetwood has the Mick Fleetwood Blues Review Club out there. I think it burnt down during the fire and they built it back, but he'll go out and work with him. And generally, when we're in Nashville at the guitar show, Rick is performing somewhere in town with somebody. It may, I think that last time we was up there, Ringo Starr was playing somewhere around there. And I said, where's your next gig? He said, well, I guess I'm playing with Ringo tomorrow night. I said, Starr? He said, yeah. I said, where? He said, oh, one of these casinos somewhere,
Wow. Well, you take the place of Lindsey Buckingham with Fleetwood Mac. You got something going, wouldn't you say, Travis?
Hey, I'm going to tell you what, Lindsey Buckingham is way up there with the Chet Atkins. I mean, that guy can do so much. He came to Orange, Texas and did a concert here at one of these theaters by himself, had 3 guitars, and he was swapping guitars, and he did an hour and a half show by himself. Man, that guy's good.
Yeah, and a great songwriter as well. And, as you said,
right.
unbelievable guitar player. Well, man,
Yeah.
I tell you, I don't know. I hope our folks can understand. And I know you don't take it for granted. You're humble about it. And I never knew that you played with all these people or met all these people. I mean, you mentioned the Wildwood. We will talk about that just briefly here. There was a show started by your uncle named Joe Woods, and it was here in our little town, Ruston, Louisiana. It was called the Wildwood Express. And Joe had that for many, many years. I was fortunate enough to play with him as a singing deputy back in the day. Yeah, and boy, had a great time. But Joe since passed away, and Travis, you have done something very tremendous for this community. You have come back here, and you have produced and made this show possible, the reunion shows. If you can talk just briefly about what the Wildwood Express show means to you and what you've done here. I know it's been a labor of love because I know you didn't get anything for that, but tell us just briefly about the Wildwood Express show.
Well, the Wildwood Express show is a country music show. Starts at 6 o'clock on a certain Saturday night once a year, and it's over at 8 o'clock. I try to run about 2 hours, and I let folks come in. Some of the folks have never been on the big stage before. That's what Joe always wanted. He always wanted to give somebody a chance to get on the big stage and to be able to sing in front of a crowd. And we'll have some get up there that sing with us that are flawless. They sing the song all the way through. Some may forget the words and they look at me, and I try to mouth the words for them to get them rolling again. But that's what Joe did, and I'm trying to keep the dream alive. Now, this year, coming up May the 1st, next year, on a Saturday, you put it on your calendar, we have got someone that started on that show when she was 13 years old, Linda Davis. Linda went on to play, to go out on the road with Reba McEntire and do that song, Does He Love You? CMA Award, Grammy nomination. Then she went out with Kenny Rogers for 2 or 3 years doing warm-up shows with him. She will be on that show. The Wildwood will be backing her up in the second half. And I'm so excited about that because she is a pro from way back. And for me to be able to call and say, hey, would you consider doing this? I mean, that just makes me swell up inside.
Well, that's a don't miss show. That'll be next year, right, Travis, in 27. Yes, and you said, what was the date again?
May the 1st.
May the 1st. That's going to be easy to remember. May the 1st of 2027 right here in our little town, the Dixie Theater. And it's a great venue. It's a beautiful venue there. And it's a great sound system. What a show. And as I said, Travis comes back here. And, of course, he's got kin folks here. But he comes back here and he puts on this show for nothing. And he is trying to carry on the legacy of his uncle, Joe Woods. And Joe had a great partner in Mary Ann, and she just passed away. What a great couple they made, and what a great contribution they made to Lincoln Parish and the surrounding area. But back in the day, Travis, when I was playing, and right there you could have people lined up for city blocks to try to get into the show.
That's correct. Yep. Sure could. And you know, we had so many good people come through there and play, Blackie Guidry and different ones. And, you know, I look back at all that good stuff and I think, wow, you know, that was pretty neat to be able to be backstage and work with them people and back them up and learn their songs. And what that was doing as a musician, it was making us really pay close attention because none of us could read music.
That's another amazing thing, not being able to read music, but there's a lot of great musicians who couldn't read music. Glenn Campbell may be one of them. The music comes out of your soul, and that's where it comes from with Travis and a lot of the other artists. So, Travis, let me ask you, after decades now in the music business, what still excites you when you walk out on the stage, buddy?
I'm going to tell you what, the crowd, and you'll hear this from any musician, you know, or any entertainer. He'll say he gets his excitement and his strength from the crowd. Because when you walk out and they all start hollering and screaming and all that kind of stuff, and that you hit that first note, you know, I'm going to tell you, and I've surrounded myself with professionals down here. I mean, these guys can even play Hotel California. You know, this band is really put together good, but that's kind of what excites us is when the people start hollering and screaming and all that kind of stuff, and knowing that you're set up when you turn around and look behind you, you've got the Charlie Daniels band, or you got Reba McEntire, or you got their band set up behind you, and you know you're all a part of that deal. So, you know, it's really a blessing.
Yes. Now, you and your wife have a gospel album, I think it's going to be out maybe this fall. What
Yeah.
inspired you to do that project, and what can we expect when that comes out?
Well, Lois and I have been writing songs a long time. You know, the Cajun band in Ruston, Cajun de la Ruston, we got about 28 songs on Apple Music out there right now. And Lois and I wrote half a dozen of those songs. But Lois was always good at writing gospel music. She'd write the words and I'd put the music to it. And then we'd sing it in church or sing it sitting out under a tree or whatever. And then we looked up one day and she had about 15 songs. Well, Larry Hanson was a good friend of ours from the guitar show. Larry spent 20 years managing Alabama, playing lead guitar for them and the Righteous Brothers and all these guys and the Texas Tenors. And Larry said, look, you know, you got all these gospel songs. Why don't you come up here and let's just cut y'all an album? So we said, okay, this was 5 years ago. So this past March, Lois and I got to Nashville on a Monday. Tuesday morning, we was in the studio because a lot of the music was done. We need to do vocals and a few other songs. So we hit the studio at 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning. We burned 26 hours in 3 days in the studio. And I covered all the songs with my acoustic and a bunch of dobro. And then Lois sang 8 songs. I sang 3. The name of the album is Precious Cornerstone. And we've already got a deal going with folks that's going to distribute it. And they'll go to iTunes and Amazon. Should be a fall release date. Now, they called the other day. They just about got it ready to go to get mastered. So we'll fly to Nashville and what they call a listening party. We're going to have a deal at their house, sit out in the backyard and cook and just listen to the album, you know, and then we'll go in the studio and listen to it a whole day and see if there's anything at all we want to add or subtract. And, you know, he brought in a guy and said, you know, this guy right here. And I shook his hand. No, I don't know him. He said, boy, he spent years with Barbara. I said, Barbara, Barbara who? He said, Mandrell. I said, well, I guess you'll do. I mean, and bass players from Johnny Cash, bass guitars that were in Johnny Cash band, you know, all that stuff is on our cotton picking album, Somebody from Aunt Louisiana.
Man, Precious Cornerstone, is that going to be the name of the album?
That's the name of the album, and that is kind of the title cut. Lois wrote that song. Boy, she put the mojo on that one. Man, it really will give you goosebumps when you hear it. And Larry plays a baby grand piano on it. Doggone it. Sounded good.
We are looking forward to that, and I'm going to give that some airtime right here on the Mike Stone Show, Music, Stories, and Conversation. We will certainly give Precious Cornerstones a little airtime here when it comes out. Well, Travis, man, we have covered some ground. We have talked about some great, great artists. We've talked about some great relationships. We've talked about some great music. So looking back over all your journey, from Branson stages there and the national tours to collecting guitars and sharing music with your wife and all these other friends of yours, what do you think has been the greatest blessing of all of that whole thing we just talked about?
Well, knowing when you go to a guitar show and people like Vince Gill will walk up, or Brad Paisley or Keith Urban, and they'll just walk up and, hey, how y'all doing? Has Lois got some of them cookies? You know, and you say, yeah, come over here and get some. And you got people looking, thinking, golly, who are they? You know, and all that kind of stuff. And it's just so cool to have those folks to do that, and knowing that the booking agents will call us when some of them big dogs come through town. You know, I didn't tell you about this one. Ford Park it'll seat about 500 under roof, and they got a big hill out there, and they can put about 15,000 people on that. And we had that thing booked solid. We opened for Joe Nichols and Craig Morgan. And, you know, we were the opening act. That was so cool to walk out there and you look and just a sea of people, and you say, wow, how did I do this? Good Lord has blessed me again, you know.
What venue was that again, Travis, the venue?
That was at Ford Park Arena in Beaumont, Texas. And that was probably 6-7 years ago. Just a real good time. Sure was.
Well, I know you work a lot with youngsters. That's what you said. One of your things that you like to do, and Joe did, was trying to maybe develop some youngsters. And I know we got one guy right here that both you and I know, but if a young musician listening today to our little talk here, dreaming of a life in music, you know, what advice do you think you could give them, you know, about talent and perseverance and faith, and try to enjoy the journey? The music business has changed a lot, Travis. Can you speak to that just a moment?
I'm going to tell the young guys and gals, be true to yourself. When you sing that song, if it feels good, then you do it again, because you got to do what makes you feel good. Okay. And the music can help you feel good a lot better than cotton picking drugs and alcohol can. Okay. So please be true to yourself. You want to start a band? Start a band. Call somebody. Don't talk about it. Do it.
Boy, I love that, Travis. I love that. The confidence that you're trying to make sure, hey, just do it. I mean, you're scared. I don't know what I can do, but you won't never know until you walk through that door and try it. So that's a great advice. If somebody wants to do it, hey, do it from your soul, do it from your heart. But most of all, do it if that's what your passion is.
That's right. That is right. And I wanted to add a little side note here. Joe Diffie autographed for me. Joe Diffie only made 500 of them. This was probably 6 months before he passed away. Okay. And we did that show with him. And I got 5 of those albums that are autographed and shrink wrapped. So they've never been opened. Dale's got one on his wall. If you want to see it, you can go out and look at it.
Oh, right. Great mutual friend of ours. And boy, he loves his music. And I know y'all have had a great friendship over the years. Well, Travis, we've come to a close here. I don't know. It's been such a fascinating journey for me to talk to you about all of this. People will understand just where Travis Woods has been and his life and what it means to him and his wife.
We have kept our nose clean, both feet on the ground, and never, ever become a big shot. Always somebody right around the corner that can push you out of the way, that can sing better than you, play better than you, but always, always sing from the heart.
Hey, what a great advice. Travis, has been a great honor and a joy to talk with you, and we will see you on the next page, buddy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, man. God bless you all, and God bless America.
Travis, thank you for sharing your stories, your journey, and the memories behind the music. It's been a real pleasure having you with us. And thanks to all of you for listening to this podcast conversation. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and join us again next time for another great conversation. Until then, I'm Mark for The Mike Stone Show, music, stories, and conversations. Thanks for listening, and may your days be filled with great music, great memories, and God's richest blessings.